just a word about the story that Mark was sharing. Pastor Wilkerson was, I think, ministering somewhere in the deep south. And one day he heard God's voice. Says, get in your car, drive up to New York City. At that time, New York City, the gangs were just going crazy. There were shootings and killings. And Wilkerson was an old mainline denomination pastor. So this is not the kind of stuff that they do very often. Hear God's voice and step beyond your boundaries and your comfort zone. But he was obedient to God's voice. And he says, where shall I go? And God says, I'll tell you when you get there. And so he just got into his car and he drove up. And he found himself in Harlem. I think it was Harlem. It's been a long time since I read this story. I won't tell you how long. Anyway, he was driving around, and when he stopped, it turned out that's exactly where God wanted him to stop. And eventually he gets out there and he starts to minister. And the gang that he encounters has one particularly ferocious gang member. His name was Nicky Cruz. And while he's trying to share the gospel, Nicky comes up to him. He says, man, I'm going to take out my knife and I'm going to cut you into 1,000,000 pieces for being on our turf. Okay? And Wilkerson's reply was a classic. Nicky, you cut me into 1,000,000 pieces, and all 1,000,000 of those pieces will still love you. Okay? So, anyway, the long and the short of the story was that Nicky did not kill Pastor Wilkerson, but little by little, they came to believe his witness, and pretty soon Nicky became saved, and many of the gang members were saved, and the pastor ended up starting this thriving work, this white guy, okay, in the middle of this whole underprivileged and minority area that was just so gang infested. Years later, I went to hear Nicky because he had become an evangelist in his life later on. It was great message and time. So, and I guess that's the bottom line, in 1,000,000 pieces, each of those 1,000,000 pieces will continue to love us. That's the story of God's love. And that's kind of what we're celebrating today. Okay? So once again, as we've been giving God great hands, let's give him another great hand.